Each year, there are hundreds of Bigfoot sightings across the country. Some people devote their lives to the pursuit of the creature. While there's no conclusive proof Bigfoot exists, when some new evidence pops up, you can bet we're gonna check it out. Hickory, North Carolina, August 2019. Doug Teague is walking his dog, Crazy Daisy, in the woods near his home when he has an encounter worth recording.
Looks like he's looking over top of that stump. Look at him. He's moving. He's moving, he's moving, he's moving. Daisy, come here. Daisy, come here.
The object was very black with a pretty silver sheen to it.
Doug, a Bigfoot enthusiast, says the creature resembled an 8-foot gorilla.
What is it? What is it? What is it?
Good question. The video is inconclusive. Let's get a closer look. It's not easy to see, but we can trace the outline of something sitting there through the trees. But Doug said the creature was doing much more before he started recording.
I heard a couple knocks, just put it off as a woodpecker. Didn't think much about it. And then a rock was through that rolled down the hill. On to the right, there was loud grunts, numerous loud grunts.
Tales of large ape-like creatures lurking in the forest of western North Carolina are as common as the region's yellow poplars.
Sighting reports there go back into the 1800s and before.
In 1979, a Bigfoot-type creature known as Nobby was reported multiple times only 40 miles away from this particular location.
And Doug says he has something else, video and casts of footprints he made at the time of the encounter.
Casts are kind of my thing, so I was excited to get in deep with this.
Cliff Barrickman, who runs the North American Bigfoot Center, compares Doug's print casts with another he considers credible.
Look at this cast, look at this cast. We have the toes across the front, what looks like an instep or an arch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have a divergent little toe right here, which I really like. That comes down. I think it's safe to say that's a very strong resemblance between the two.
So Doug's video is kind of vague, but the footprints look like powerful evidence, right? Well, not so fast. There's a storied history of hoaxers who've made Bigfoot prints just to toy with the believers. So let's take the video to our experts, starting with anthropologist Kathy Strain.
So this is one of the casts that he has, and it is extremely believable. The toes are all fairly even at the top.
Strain says Doug's cast fit the profile of a giant hominid that might live in the woods.
Those are clearly footprints. They clearly look to be 15 or so inches long. I can see the toes clearly. I can see the heel clearly. I think they're beautiful evidence that what he experienced that day was real.
But when we take the prints to wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley, she's less interested in their size than the distance between them.
They're actually up to 6 feet apart. And when you think about that in comparison to the size of the animal that creates them, the animal would have to be around 15 foot tall to have a gait that long.
Eckersley says you can't tell the size of the creature in the video, so maybe it is that big. But she pointed out something curious. Listen, there's something we're not hearing.
If this was a Bigfoot, I would actually expect the dog who is with Doug to be really, really anxious. Dogs have an extraordinary sense of smell. So if this was something brand new, maybe something like a Sasquatch that had a totally different smell to a human, the dog would probably not be keeping quiet.
So if it's not a Bigfoot, what is it? Could it be a bear? Maybe. But remember, Doug said it threw rocks. Bears don't do that.
They can grasp things between their paws, but they can't necessarily throw them.
Eckersley proposes another theory.
From what I can see, the animal is hunched over and appears to have fur covering its entire body. So it could be something like a silverback gorilla that sits in that posture.
But hold up. Gorillas are not known to hang out in North Carolina, which raises another possibility.
It could be a human who is wearing some kind of suit to make it appear like they are covered in fur. All things considered, I really don't know what this animal is.
I agree. The footprints and casts are fascinating, but not conclusive. And the video is a bit of a wash. We just can't see the figure clearly enough. Our best guess? Man in a suit. But we can't completely say it's not the Bigfoot Doug said it was. He's convinced. January 2017. Dylan Dickerson is taking out the trash from his home in Lewisburg, North Carolina, when a loud noise startles him. He grabs a smartphone and records this. The video shows Dylan's backyard. Nothing special, except for that consistent, blaring sound piercing the suburban quiet. It sounds like the source must be nearby, but there's nothing in sight.
Never heard anything like it. So loud. What could that be?
We reached out to Dylan, who says the sound was very real and very scary.
It sent chills down my spine. I felt very in shock. I didn't really know what to think.
Dylan says he later searched for the source of the sound, but never found it. And after he posted the video online,
people came up with so many theories, like it's apocalyptic signs, or machinery, or factories in the background.
The apocalyptic theory Dylan mentions comes from the Bible, according to Professor of Religious Studies Diana Pasulka.
According to the revelation of John in the Bible, the book of Revelations, the apocalypse or the end times are going to be heralded by these trumpets, the trumpets of Revelation.
But journalist Alexis Brooks suggests another theory. What if the sound is part of a secret program? The U.S. government has previously used high-frequency pulses to study the Earth's upper atmosphere, but many believe these sounds can be used to cause floods and hurricanes. Others say they can down planes and cause chronic fatigue.
Some people feel that advanced technology is being used to puncture and literally shift the ionosphere. Some feel that the weather is being controlled and perhaps used for nefarious purposes.
So here's an interesting fact. The Air Force actually did try to manipulate the weather during the Vietnam War through a secret cloud seeding program called Operation Popeye. So what's the source of this strange sound? A government experiment? The supernatural? Or something else entirely? We sent the video to our audio expert, Dr. Ben Gottesman, who created a spectrogram to visualize the sound.
As you can see, there's like 7 major episodes where they flare up.
First question, could this have been some kind of weather or atmospheric phenomenon?
There's a whole spectrum of different types of thunder, from loud bangs to low rumbles.
But listen to thunder compared to Dylan's noise. Doesn't sound like a match.
Thunder really doesn't produce these sorts of harmonics. It's much more of a lower cacophonous rumble.
Gottesman believes the most likely source is something mechanical.
When the brakes of semi-trucks go bad, they can sometimes produce this long, drawn-out, screeching sound, similar to what we hear on this recording.
Gottesman compared Dylan's sounds with some squeaky brakes.
So that's the truck brake. Most of the energy, the strongest, is at like 260 hertz. And here, it's also, the strongest is around 260, right here. It's good evidence that it's some mechanical sound because there are certain shared characteristics. The harmonics, the tonal structure.
While Gottesman sees similarities, there's something that still doesn't add up.
These were really ominous and strange sounding, so I wouldn't expect one truck to produce what was recorded.
The sound from Dylan's yard seems to be from multiple vehicles layered together. So is it proof or not? Dylan swears the video hasn't been doctored, and he's captured similar sound since. And according to our expert, it's not the weather, and it's likely not end times. The truck brakes theory is interesting, but we can't explain the layering or why the sound went on so long. This case remains a mystery. Our verdict? Unidentified sound.
It's July 2016 in the Pisgah National Forest in western North Carolina. 2 astronomy-grade cameras have been installed by Appalachian State University astrophysicist Dr. Dan Caton to observe the Brown Mountain Ridge every night. And now they seem to have captured something inexplicable. Anomalous white lights blink on sporadically in the night sky high above the ridge and over the street lights down in the town. In the span of about 20 minutes, they appear at least 4 times. Dan says when he played back this footage, he was amazed.
This video stood out in that it had something that was obviously different. But we had a light here that persisted over 20 minutes, came and went, had no lateral motion, sideways, had no up-down motion. These claims of paranormal, they deserve investigation.
Although accounts of the mysterious lights go back many years, the first published article about them only came out in 1912. Around this time, there were frequent reports of sightings from a spot near a local hotel in the mountains. Journalist M.J. Benaiah says the reports had reached such a fever pitch by 1922 that the U.S. Geological Survey decided to investigate.
People claim that what we're seeing here is a phenomenon known as ball lightning. You have static electricity just like you do with a regular lightning strike, except instead of it arcing into a sort of line, it balls up and it sort of hovers temporarily.
Others, though, believe the Brown Mountain lights have a spookier source.
There's a school of belief that the Brown Mountain lights are actually some sort of manifestation of spirits or ghosts. There's claims that soldiers from the Civil War were killed during a battle near the mountains, and what we see are their ghosts carrying lanterns at night.
Another theory that's been floated is train headlights. In 1913, a USGS investigator found that Southern Railway trains could be seen from Brown Mountain, and that many reported sightings lined up with the train schedule. But this idea was flushed out after the tracks washed away in a 1916 flood, and the sightings continued. So will our experts finally be the ones to get to the bottom of this centuries-old mystery?
Physicist Dr. Matthew Shadagas explores the ball lightning hypothesis.
We don't understand from a scientific perspective how ball lightning could form. We have a series of equations in physics known as Maxwell's equations. Maxwell's equations tell us how to make predictions for how electrical phenomena behave. Unfortunately, Maxwell's equations don't give us something that look like ball lightning.
These 4 complex equations are named after Scottish physicist and mathematician James Clerk Maxwell, who came up with an early version of them in the 1860s. Based on the equations, the size of ball lightning's electric charge would be too great for it to move as observed here. So could the lights just be coming from a plane?
When the light shows up that looks sort of like a floating, hovering ball, you know it's not a plane. A plane that has blinking lights is traveling through the frame is going to make a long, drawn-out line.
But what if it could be a reflection of a light on the ground, as we discussed before in the case of the Turkish UFO? Since we keep mentioning the Fata Morgana phenomenon, here's how it works. It occurs when the temperature of the air below the line of sight is colder than the air above. This causes light rays passing through to bend down, making the image of the object appear higher than the actual object.
This is an illusion that occurs near the horizon, and we see lights that are significantly above the horizon.
The high altitude of the lights doesn't seem to make much sense for the Fata Morgana theory, and the conditions need to be just right to create such an illusion. This is seen with such frequency, we're going to rule that explanation out. Therefore, our verdict is that the Brown Mountain lights remain unexplained. Hopefully, with continuing research, we will someday crack the code.
It's January 2021, deep in the mountains of Jackson County, North Carolina. YouTubers Shane Simmons and Melody West have traveled to a mysterious site famed throughout the state.
Well, let's get out, take a look.
Let's do it.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
At the bottom of a small hill, a large gray soapstone boulder emerges, nestled in the grass.
A lot of interesting carvings on here.
But up close, it's clear the curves and cuts combine to tell an ancient story.
And when you get down there, the first thing you want to look for is the 7 fingers of Judaculla.
The legend claims the 7 fingers are the actual handprint of an ancient 7-fingered giant. Author Alexis Brooks says the Cherokee people consider Judaculla to be a psychopomp, a being that guided souls between the material world and the spiritual one.
The Judaculla giant is said to be one who comes from the mountaintop, has landed on this rock, but he did so with a purpose. He was there to chase off intruders.
But perhaps Judaculla isn't simply a mystical giant coming down from the mountains, but rather an ancient astronaut visitor coming from outer space. Author Jason Martell says the story goes that when Judaculla crashed into the rock, he may have opened a portal to other worlds, perhaps to where he originated.
We know that there's been a lot of UFO activity in the area. It's very possible that this is some type of a beacon or a lighthouse, perhaps opening some type of lost energy field. There's even been suggested that Judaculla, the giant himself, used this as a gateway that would allow for communication even today.
Shane says this force of energy is something he felt firsthand.
Touching the rock itself, it gave a little bit of a charge, for lack of a better word. You could just feel something from the rock.
Stories of powerful giants can be found in numerous ancient texts. From the Greek gigantes to the Hebrew Nephilim, some believe these giants really walked the earth. So could Judaculla be a similar supersized being? Let's see how our experts measure up.
Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart considers if this mark was truly left by Judaculla the giant.
Many people believe that print there was his actual handprint, but in actuality, we can see that it is carved into the stone.
Barnhart says the well-defined edges and grooves that seem to curl up toward the rock face prove that it's been chiseled out, since a handprint impression like this one made in clay would be less delineated and more diffused.
This stone was probably carved hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
What's more, Barnhart doesn't believe the stone is telling us just one story, but instead, many.
At 1,500 different carvings, that's the most on any stone in all of North America. The initial carvings on this stone could be reaching back thousands of years ago. In my experience, rocks that have this much carving on them are not done in a single episode. They're done repeatedly over generations.
And NASA geologist Dr. Bob Anderson adds that the type of rock has made it particularly convenient for petroglyphs.
The rock is made up of soapstone, which is a metamorphic rock, a rock that has been changed. It's been heated by pressure and or temperature. It actually makes it very soft and it's easy to carve into.
Barnhart says, given the location of the rock, it was likely carved during the Mississippian period, which lasted from about 800 AD to around 1600 AD, and saw the development of some of the most complex societies that had ever existed in North America.
Big, unique pieces of geology, topography like this were oftentimes landmarks along protected trade routes. Of course, the Mississippian civilization were a bunch of independent city-states, and you didn't want to accidentally, without permission, cross from one territory to another because you would be in big trouble.
So maybe there's some truth to the legend of Judaculla, at least the part about the rock being used to scare away intruders and mark the tribe's turf.
This was a marker that showed the extent of what their tribe was so that people would understand that they would be protecting this land. Before smartphones, before the internet, before computers, this is the way that the people were actually talking tribe to tribe. It's just like using Google Maps that you have on your cars nowadays.
Our verdict: these complex markings were engraved by indigenous peoples as a sophisticated map. While the story of Judaculla is compelling, we have no evidence the markings on this boulder belong on his list of accomplishments.